Okay. So, the nurse who had been with me all night, she called in for backup. Another nurse came in. They were trying to get the baby back on the monitor. They were having a little trouble, and she's like, this is not working. And then when they finally did get the baby back on the monitor, my contractions had shifted to about 1.5 minutes apart. Somewhere between 1 minute and 2 minutes. She got really concerned, and I could see the look on her face of concern because baby A's heart rate kept decelerating, and it was going down into the 40s with every single contraction. So she says something to the nurse that's helping. The nurse pretty much looks over at the monitor. She said, yeah, that's not a monitor issue, that's a decel. Because they were trying to make sure it wasn't just because the monitors kept jumping off. And they were like, no, the monitor's back on. We have the baby's heart rate. The baby's decelerating. So she's like, call Dr. So-and-so, you know, tell him this is what's going on. Tell him, call him, tell him call us back. So the nurse jumps over on the phone. She calls to the main station, call Dr. So-and-so, have him call us back. She hangs up. Had to be 15 seconds later, the phone rings in my room. It's Dr. So-and-so. And she tells him, her contractions coming 1 minute apart. I've tried to stop them. I did what you told me to do. You know, baby's decelerating down in the 40s. Da-da-da-da. I think she was on the phone a total of 10 seconds. Okay. And from her side, I heard, okay, click. And she turns to the other nurse, get her ready for a C-section. And I'm just like, oh, great. And so evidently it was, okay, it's now become an emergency. So in the room, the big, pretty labor and delivery room that has the wallpaper and the rocking chair and everything's all nice and beautiful, which I knew ahead of time I would have only labored in that room. Delivery would have been in the OR regardless, even if it had been vaginal. But what they did was they tried to prep me in that room to give him time to get prepped, to give an anesthesiologist his time to come and talk to me, and to give, I guess, the folks in the OR room to prep. Now, I will say I left out a lot of details while I was in labor, and I'll pick that up now. One thing, I was a little in and out of it the whole time I was in that labor and delivery room because of the Stadol and, you know, the morphine and the MAGA stuff. So there wasn't a whole lot of conversation going on. I will say, while I was in there, one of my closer coworkers showed up. She was wonderful. She showed up right after I got there. I mean, literally, they had just got the babies on the, we're getting the babies on the monitor when she showed up. So she got there right at like, no, I take that back. I take that back. They weren't even on the monitors when she got there. She got there about 6:30 because I had texted everyone I knew, hey, pretty sure my water's broken, going to the hospital, because I was supposed to be at work the next day. So I made sure I text my coworkers because they would know not to expect me. And so she was one of them. She came straight to the hospital. So she got there about 6:30, and she stayed with me till about 10:30. During that same time, my mom came, my husband came and brought 2 of the kids with him, and they came and hung out for a little bit, and everybody had gone home by 10:30. You know, she went home at like 10. My husband went home about 10. I'm sorry, she went home about 10:30. My husband went home about 10, somewhere in there. And so it was just me in the room by myself at that point, and the nurse. So, you know, I'm in and out of it anyhow. There's not a whole lot of talking. Once the contractions had picked up, there wasn't a whole lot of talking between me and the coworker. And even though she was wonderful, you know, I was just sort of focusing kind of out of it and breathing. But it was one of those things where we were expecting the labor not to progress, because the doctor was saying, we need you to have at least 24 hours to the steroids to kick in for the baby's lungs. The nurse was saying they typically try to stall you until you hit 34 weeks. So her thing was, they're probably going to try to push the labor out as far as they can. So, you know, just try to get some sleep. So, of course, you know, I sent everybody home. My husband had to go home and take care of the other kids. You know, my kids had school the next day, that type of thing. So everybody left. Well, then it's, oh no, it's an emergency. We've got to go now. And I'm like, oh no, nobody's here but me. So they packed up my laptop, my cell phone, everything they packed up in bags to take with me down for the C-section. So I quickly got on the phone and tried to dial my husband from the hospital phone. No answer. I think I called him 9 times back to back and left a message and was like, look, this is what's going on. And no answer, which I didn't expect him to. I knew he was going to be asleep. You know, it's after 2 o'clock in the morning. He has to go to work at 5. So I knew that he was going to be asleep. That wasn't a shocker. But I was really hoping he would hear the phone, but he didn't. I called my mom, who lives about 10 minutes from the hospital. I told her what's going on. She said, I'm on my way. So in the meantime, in the room, the big pretty room that I'm in, they put like this special blue, it's a different kind of gown on you, not the same gown that I had already previously wore, but it was a different one. They put a gown on you. They put these compression looking things on my legs. They had me take all my, well, I'm sorry, ahead of time, while I was in there, they had already had me take all my jewelry off. Because as you can see, you know, I wear necklaces, I wear earrings, I wear, you know, rings, that sort of things. They had me take everything off. They had me watch a video on C-section. They had me watch a video on epidural. They had me watch a video on the services of the hospital. They have this really nifty thing where you can dial in on the phone. And when you dial in on the phone, somehow it's connected in with the TV. So whatever you dial in on the phone, the video shows up on the television. You can watch it. So I'm sure other hospitals have it too, but I just thought it was cool. So, you know, they had me watch it, and I had to sign off that I watched it. So that's how they kind of educate you on what you're going to have done. And there's hundreds of videos that they offer, and I did watch some more of them while I was in the hospital recovery for those 4 days, and I'll talk more about that too. But I ended up, you know, watching those. So I had already knew kind of what to expect, and I've watched tons of YouTube videos, tons of videos online over the last couple of years. I just never thought, you know, I'd be getting the C-section, but, you know, at least I was familiar with it. They had the anesthesiologist come in quickly. She came in. She had me sign off that I'd be getting a spinal instead of an epidural, which I was fine with because I've had epidural before. I had some bad issues with that, which is why I wasn't too keen on the whole C-section thing anyhow, because I was like, well, you guys won't put me to sleep because you don't want to put me to sleep because of my diabetes and high blood pressure, and I don't really want epidural because of the bad problem. So they opted for a spinal, which, you know, I signed off on. She told me what it was. She told me she'd also be giving me some other type of injection at the site of the incision. I couldn't tell you what that was or what it was for, but it was, I guess, to help with pain as well, like a more localized pain after the surgery. And then the doctor came in. He said, hey, you know, we're going to have to do it now. The baby's decelerating. We got to go. I was like, okay, I got you. So, you know, they get me prepped. They wheel me over to the ER, which, amusingly enough for me, literally my room is like right here, and it's a little tiny hallway and one turn, and the OR is right there. So I was close, very, very close. And they just wheeled me over there on the bed. We get there, and they, you know, have me switch from the bed to the stretcher, which wasn't a problem. You know, I was having contractions, but they weren't really, you know, horrible. And they, you know, they were there, but they were, it was one of those things where I think the anxiety from the C-section having to be done overrode the pain of the contractions. So I was a little iffy, you know, on how I was going to be able to handle things anyhow when I got in there, not having a panic attack. So I really wasn't paying attention to the contractions at that point. I was trying to calm myself down. And with me, when I'm trying to calm myself down, I'm a little aggravated. I use laughter. I make jokes. I sing. You know, I do little stupid, silly stuff to kind of, you know, and ask questions and joke around, which the nurses and the whole staff in there, they got to experience that, you know, while I was in there. So I come in, and the nurse pretty much, she helps me get on the bed. They are trying to get my spinal in. They had a really hard time with the spinal, and part of it was I didn't have my back curved enough. That was my fault, but I couldn't seem to get in the position they needed me to. Part of it was I was falling off the little table, and they swept it down. You're not falling off. Yes, I am. You got this little itty-bitty, skinny, small nurse trying to hold my big behind up. She is going to get crushed if I fall. They're like, no, we got you. No, she doesn't have me. I'm telling you. Yes, she does. Okay, fine, whatever. So, one, I wasn't in the right position. Two, they were saying because I am a little larger that sometimes it's a little harder to get through, I guess, the layers or whatever. But they finally got the spinal. I will say, those of you that don't know the difference between an epidural and a spinal, as an epidural, they put the needle in, they thread a catheter, they take the needle out, the catheter stays in, they inject medicine pretty much the whole time. A spinal, they stick the needle in, they squirt in the medicine, and they pull out. That's it. There's no ongoing stuff. So they have to do it quickly. It's in and out because then it will wear off a lot quicker, which I was okay with that. So I got my spinal. I think they had to stick me, I want to say, 12 or had to be like 12 or 15, somewhere between 12 and 15 different times they had to stick me. So that wasn't very pleasant. And I will end part 3 here and start part 4.